up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to The Nerdy Narrative, a channel where I talk about all of my adventures in reading. Today's adventures, we're going to talk about all of the books that I read during the month of August, what I rated that book, some brief thoughts about it, a little bit of a description so that you can determine if it might be a book for you. Now, if I don't give you enough detail, but I tease just enough to get your interest piqued, I will have all the books listed in the description box below with a link so that you can go and read the description and other reviews in their full. My website will also be in the description for access to all of my written reviews for all of these books. So let's just jump right in. The first book that I read in the month of August was my patron pick of the month. It's called Orphan X by Greg Hurwitz. This was such a phenomenal book. You may have seen my video where I recently decided I was going to start annotating. Not the kind where you write in the books, just where you tab. I'll have that video linked in the cards above if you want to check it out. This is about Evan Smoke. Evan was an orphan who was recruited by a man when he was a young boy into the orphan program. It's basically a black ops that is completely expendable, the perfect assassin. As you can probably guess, we're learning about the program through Evan because he has removed himself from the program. We get all of that and more in the introduction to the series. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars and I fully intend to continue reading the series. I believe at time of filming there are 9 books that are currently published in this series and I cannot wait to continue on. Next is an anthology called Shakespeare Unleashed. It was my first 5-star read of the month of August and it is a collection of stories that were inspired by the works of Shakespeare. Even if you're not a fan of Shakespeare work or you haven't read many of his works, you will still enjoy this collection. I am not a fan of Shakespeare. I'm not well read of his works, but I have read a lot of the authors in this anthology and I really loved what they did. If Shakespeare had written horror like this, I probably would be more of a fan of his, but this was a fantastic collection. It was edited by James Aquilone. If you want to check out my Instagram, I did post a little snippet or a quote from almost all of the stories as I read them if you want to get a little bit of a feel of what the vibe is for that anthology before you pick it up. My next read of the month was given to me by Swashbuckler Press from London, and the title of the book is Over London by Tony Johnson and George Penney. I was absolutely delighted to receive a copy of the audiobook narrated by one of my favorites, Brendan McDonald, who brought this story to life in true Brendan McDonald fashion. Over London is perfect for readers who are looking to have a good time, have some great laughs, and meet some truly unique and interesting characters. This story starts off with a bang. Pun intended. A priest from the Church of Vengeful Acquisition explodes. Not long after that one, another one goes. It starts off a chain reaction of priests exploding. If only Over London had a professional investigator that could look into this and make the citizens feel safe again. Oh wait, how about the dread pirate Captain Purple Rain? Yes, you heard me. Purple Rain. After having her ship and the title of pirate being stripped from her in order to escape the hangman's noose, Alex Rain and her crew turn into privateers where they investigate the whodunits of Over London. The only problem is they have no idea how to do their jobs. This was such a delightful story. I loved it. Absolutely would recommend the audiobook. Brendan McDonald is just like many other people did during the month of August to get ready for the live action, I reread the first 23 volumes of One Piece. This box set contains the East Blue arc and the Baroque's Works arc. I figured the live action would stop with the East Blue one and I was correct, but I didn't care because my all-time favorite scene happens in the 23rd volume and I just couldn't stop until I got to that one again. And it was so good. It was so good. A couple of the books that I read in the month of August were for SBFBO, where we are not sharing star ratings, but the first one that I read was called Nascent Witch. Author Melissa Bobby got a new fan right away. I love her writing style. I love the way that she develops her characters. You just can't help but love them and love their relationships with each other. Nascent Witch is all about Selah Glasser. A few days before she is to turn 28 years old, Selah learns that she is actually a witch. Who delivers this information? Well, none other than her familiar, a black cat, but don't call him a cat, named Sable. The two get off to a bit of a rocky start, but I absolutely love the relationship. I loved learning about witches and the familiars, how they're written in this book. Now, I am not well read on witches, so I don't know if it was unique or not, but it was unique to me. I really enjoyed how the author fleshed that relationship out, just what that partnership meant for both the witch and the familiar, and I won't get into any more detail than that because I think it's something you would really enjoy discovering yourself. It was such a feel-good read, but there was also a bit of a danger involved because even though Selah is a witch, she could choose on nascent Eve to not perform the rituals that would allow her to actually perform spells. She could choose to not do that and just live an ordinary life. And while you and I might be thinking, wow, if I got told I was a witch a few days before I was 28, I would make that decision immediately. You think that, but that's when all of these other things start happening in your life that get in the way. It was such a good book. I absolutely will be reading more by this author. Keeping right in the comedy route, my next read was The Arc for Thanks for the Memory by author James Flynn. Honest to goodness, the author describes this one himself the best. Thanks for the Memory explores a possible consequence of the social media craze. Whilst reading this book, it is my hope you will gradually be able to recognize how bizarre the relationship between humans and technology is becoming. But above all else, it would be nice to see you have some kind of nightmare or nervous breakdown by the time you finish it. It's about a comedian who decides to get on this new app that allows you to use technology to pull a memory out of your brain. It turns it into a video that you can upload onto social media. So Reed thinks to himself, you know, I could do something here that could really do some great marketing for me and help me get some gigs. He's kind of reached that point in his career where all of his material is a little old and people aren't booking him as much. And so he does, and he uploads it and it goes viral and it has the intended effect. He's getting jobs like crazy. But just like in Nascent Witch, and you think, oh, I'm going to do this, you don't think about the consequences, and that's when life says, hey, I'm going to introduce this into your life and you're going to regret uploading that embarrassing memory onto the internet. Reed thinks, no big deal, I'll just delete it. And that's where the story takes off from there. This was a great read. It's a novella. You can read it in a night just like I did. I loved it. But there's also the fear there because this kind of stuff that's happening here with this social media, I could absolutely see that happening in our world not long from now. For those of you who have been around for a while, you know I'm rereading The Wheel of Time. I did finish The Path of Daggers. There are a few things in here that are really good, maybe 3 things, and the rest of it, all of that is fluff. I can say with confidence, if I had not been reading this series when it came out back in the 90s, mid-90s and early 2000s, I would have DNF'd it. It would never have become the beloved series that it is now. Robert Jordan spends a huge majority repeating everything that happens in the previous book. It's been really brutal in this reread since I'm reading 1 book per month. I really should have probably spread them out like 1 every 3 to 4 months. But here we are. My next book that I read was another SPFBO. It was If Light Above by Lily Ann Crow. And if you've been watching the channel, you know that this was the book that I selected as my semi-finalist to go forward to Bookborn to go up against the other semi-finalists chosen by the other judges on my team. I know that she's read it. I know that she enjoyed it. I'm hoping it becomes our finalist for Team Bookborn this year. I'm so excited. The name of the series this one is a part of is A War of Whispers. The way that this series is written, the first 2 books tell one story. The next 2 books are another story that takes place 3 years after the first 2, and 3 of the books are out already. The 4th book I want to say comes out, may even be out by the time this video goes up. So I cannot wait to continue the series. It's another fantasy detective series. This one's more along the lines of Sherlock Holmes playing Clue, but the character that reminds me of Sherlock is not as aloof as Sherlock. He's more likable, if that makes any type of sense. Our main character, Osmond Benwickery, has been hired by a duke to investigate what in the world is going on, because in one night the queen goes into labor early. The early labor results in an early birth of the prince. While she is bleeding out, hemorrhaging after giving birth, someone kidnaps the baby. Then in another part of the town at the same time, the king has been attacked. There's been an assassination attempt on the king. So our main character, Osmond Ben Wickery, is hired to determine what is going on, who is behind all of it, and most importantly, where's the prince? The story, the plot, all that's going on is going to have you turning those pages. The characters are so lovable. Even the darker characters that you're not sure of, you don't know if you can trust them or not. They're so entertaining. It's so good. Y'all, it was such a good month of reading. Such a good month of reading. Another reread that I'm working on is the Dresden Files series. I read Proven Guilty and oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. There's no talking about these books at this point because it would give away all of the prior books that I know a lot of people are watching. They're working their way through. One of those being my husband. I think my husband is on book 7 now, so I definitely don't want to give anything away, but there was something that happened in here that I love only because I know in books like 16 and 17 what it means. Actually, before that, some really interesting stuff happens, but I'm just loving it. I could be in a constant reread of Dresden and never get tired of it. My next completed read for the month of August was a short story collection by Michael Harris Cohen. Oh, wow. This one was a lot of fun. There were so many stories in this collection that shared themes. They seemed to be grouped together. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but there were feelings of either being trapped or feeling trapped. There were several that were set in similar settings, but they were so different from one another. This is an author who writes the story as long as it needs to be. If that means it's 23 pages that it takes to get that story told, then that's how many pages the author gives it. If it's done in 8, that's how much it gets. I love an author who lets the story write itself, or at least that's how it felt to me when reading these. It was so different. There were so many interesting things, so many things that were unexpected. For those of you who don't like reading full-length horror novels or speculative fiction novels, this will be a great collection to try out. I have the physical copy here in my hands of my next one, The Boatmore Butcher by L. Stevenson. When I read this one in August, I read the ARC because the paperback did not publish until September 1st and I have one on pre-order. This is the complete story of the serial killer, The Boatmore Butcher. If you have read The Goners, then you have read the beginning of this story, and this is it in its complete form, beginning to end, and it was wonderful. I've read The Goners a few times. I've read the middle section twice. This was the first time that I got to read the ending, and it was just perfection. If you are someone who loves slashers, this is the book for you. If you love a great serial killer story where you get that story from start to finish, you know why, you know what happened to trigger, and just how it ends, or does it end? No surprise, it was a 5-star read for me. I have just absolutely enjoyed anything I have ever read by L. Stevenson. My final read for the month of August was The Poison Song, which was the final book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. It was so bittersweet to say goodbye to these characters, this world of Sarn. This is the best science fiction fantasy blend I have read. It's aliens who landed on this world to colonize it, and this world contains magic and immortal beings who fight these aliens. There were so many truths and revelations and things that I couldn't believe that there were more surprises that I should have figured out. I should have seen a lot of this coming, and I'm sure a lot of you probably would have, but y'all, I'm so easy to get one over on. I'm just reading like crazy, but I never stopped to actually put the pieces together, though I feel like I try to do that sometimes. I'm just the absolute worst. Probably why I love reading thrillers and mysteries so much. I never figure out who did it, but this was a fantastic close to the series. Jen Williams don't owe me a thing except more books. I want more books. I will absolutely read more by her. I saw someone on Goodreads had started reading a book by her I'd never heard of. I didn't even read anything about it. I just hit want to read. So I'm absolutely going to be reading more by every single one of these authors that I talked about here today. today. I hope that I introduced you to a book you haven't read before that sounded interesting, sound like one that might be something you would like to read for yourself. If you do and you want to chat about it with something, all of the ways that you can find me on social media are down in the description below, along with a link to all of these books in their descriptions if you want to check out more about them. Thank you all so very much for watching and joining me here today. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.